All right, it is Saturday, April 5th, and I am going to talk about LM-STEM yet again. A few too many things I forgot about here that I wanted to, cover correctly, so we're going to make sure that we do that. Let me just get my screen FluCam embedded here in order. Okay, and this is the same sample that we used for LM-TEM, okay? So just like before, we can set the height here, push eccentric focus. It was already pretty close here based on the stored position I have, so that's good. Now, so LM-STEM, you can enter LM-STEM from both STEM nanoprobe, which is what we use when we're using the corrector, or STEM microprobe, which is when we're not using the corrector, right? So the convergence angle is much smaller and the corrector is basically irrelevant. On a system with a monochromator here, so the monochromator isn't filtering right now, but it's still part of the optics here. So we have the lens setting for the monochromator here. So normally we put this at -40 if we're going to do TEM work or microprobe STEM. If we were going to do nanoprobe STEM, we would put this at +40. As far as what that means for the LM-STEM, this doesn't make a huge difference whether you have this at positive or -40 when we go into LM-STEM mode. It will keep this from whatever it was before. The main difference will be the amount of current. So the amount of current that you're going to get if you have a positive focus, all of the factors being the same, will be about half that you will get with a negative focus, okay? But aside from that, the alignment really shouldn't be too much different between each of those, so that's just something you kind of have to keep in mind. For simplicity's sake, though, we'll assume that we're setting this up to go into STEM nanoprobe mode, so we're going to have +40, and then we'll leave it at that for when we go into LM mode, okay? Just like I mentioned in the LM-TEM video, so the condenser to aperture centering transfers well between the modes. Okay, so with this, I'll verify that it's centered. Find beam settings, free control, C3 off. Okay, looks good. Okay, and this centering, again, on the corrected, the 3 condenser corrected systems like the Themis here, this tends to transfer really well between modes. So this will transfer to STEM nanoprobe, and it will also transfer well to LM-TEM and LM-STEM. Okay, so we don't need to do this again. On the Talos and the Technize, that tends not to be the case. Okay, again, I mentioned that in the LM-TEM video. Okay, all right. So with that, let's hit the STEM button. And now, to enable LM mode, you have to check Enable LM Scan. Now, point something important here about the focusing. So if you expand the STEM imaging panel and the focus tab, you see there's a bunch of options here for focus. Okay, so assuming your C3 lens is set properly, you would want this set on objective. Okay, this is the correct configuration for the corrected the three condenser system with CS probe correction. Okay, you don't want this on intensity, which would be focusing with C3. You want this on objective. Okay, again, assuming C3 is set properly. That's actually a well, actually, I did discuss this in some previous videos. This is where you use this intensity list focus. So actually here, let me do this real quick. I'm going to turn diffraction off. Okay, so you can see, so this is actually perfect, right? So you have this caustic spot, which is focus inside of a diffuse halo. Okay, so this is exactly what you would want as far as your C3 being what it should be. Okay, and the other way you can verify this is if you open up S-Core here and we go to state of correction, manual correction here, and we click beam tilt. So if we have C3 and the objective set properly, we see that the caustic spot stays still as we tilt the beam. Okay, and that's exactly what's happening. So this is telling me that we've got our lens configuration set perfectly here. Okay. Okay, so we've got C3 set well, we've got our objective set well. These are all at eccentric focus values. I mean, you can go ahead and push eccentric. I'll push eccentric focus anyway, just so you can see. It should give us back the exact same probe image, and it basically does. Okay. All right. So, anyways, we have this set properly. So I'm going to turn diffraction on here, and so now we need to focus the image with Z. And so usually what this means, this is kind of an interesting aside. So you can actually, believe it or not, you can tell in the Ronchigram how you need to move the sample, whether or not to move it up or down to get it into focus. Okay, so so right now, actually, let me mag out here. Okay, so this light stuff, this is E-beam platinum. Okay, so if I put that in, okay, so now let me switch this to high res mode. Okay, so now it's a little bit tough here to see. I need to find like an edge. Okay, so right there, let me turn off the screen marks. Right there, if you look, this is the edge of the E-beam PT with the platinum. There's a dark fringe, okay? That means we're over-focused, okay? So what this means is that we need to move the sample up, okay? This is actually different than the case of a TEM image, right? In the case of a TEM image, if your image is over-focused, you need to move it down. In the case of a STEM image, it's different. Okay, without going through the reasons for this, you can explain this with ray diagrams and using something called the principle of reciprocity. But yes, this is what we need to do. So to show you I'm not lying, okay, let me go back to the image here. Okay, and now I'm going, just so you see, okay, I'm going up with the Z. And you can see my image is going into focus, right? And I didn't have to go very high here. I mean, I then overshot it slightly. Now here's where, again, if I have the piezo, that's perfect right there, basically. Okay, yeah, I had to move the Z. I forget how much exactly. It wasn't much. It was like, I think it might have been a fraction of a micrometer. But anyways, okay, we have the sample set properly here. Okay, height set properly. And again, we've deviated slightly from eccentric, okay? So now, we have LM enabled here, okay? So now if we mag all the way out, let me move off the sample here slightly. So 5,000 is the highest or the lowest you can go in regular STEM, and then you go into LM-STEM and you start at 1 million X, which seems kind of silly, but you do. Okay, and then you mag out here, and there's your lamella. Okay, so we can talk about aligning LM mode. Now, one thing that happens here is it didn't change the spot number because I don't believe anyway. Let me take a look here. Actually, let me do this here. Let me put the spot number at, say, 7. So we'll give us a little more juice. But I'm going to mag back in here because I believe what happens is the spot number will be remembered between the modes. Yes, so the spot number we were at in normal STEM was 9, and so when we went into LM-STEM it was 7. Okay, so it will remember the spot number. What it also remembers, unfortunately, is how the focus was set. So we had the focus set for objective. When you go into LM-STEM, you actually don't want this on objective. Okay, so the objective lens is actually the same value that we had in LM-TEM, but you don't want to use this in STEM mode. You want this actually on intensity, which controls C3. Okay, so you have to change this manually, unfortunately. Okay, now if we were going from microprobe, this would have been intensity to begin with, and you don't have the option to change it, so it would go to intensity once we go into LM mode. Okay, but in the case that we started from, we do have the option to change this. There also is, and I'll show you this a little bit later here. So actually, okay, we have this on intensity. So now we are deviated slightly from eccentric, but let's go ahead and we're not that far away. So we'll click intensity list focus. And now we're focusing the image with C3, okay, to get it as best as we can. That's good right there. So now I'm going to pause, done, and we'll turn off diffraction. And we can talk about alignment here. Let me remove the HADF detector. Now, HADF is an oxymoron here. It's not really a HADF image. We're using the HADF detector, but I assure you it's not a HADF image that we're forming. I'm going to move this here to the middle. Let me turn on this circle marks. Okay, so we need something here. Let me switch to natural. So I can't go any higher with diffraction off. One thing you can do, though, is you can turn on high resolution mode. Okay. If I go to intensity list focus, it makes the probe back to the original size. And now we can balance the pivot points here. So you can see those are basically okay. It's a little tricky with the way the fluke cam responds, but that's basically okay. Yeah, that's basically, it was okay. I deliberately messed it up. Okay, that's worse. If you stare at this long enough, it'll... Technically, since we're in STEM, it's best to do this with the beam at crossover. You could do this with the beam expanded a little, but technically you want to do this at crossover, but no, that's good. All right, and then we'll spread this out. And now the last thing, so, you know, like when we're in regular STEM, we can center the spot inside the halo, but that doesn't work here, okay, because our convergence angle is so small, we can't really do that. So we just have to do rotation center here and minimize the image movement. So this is actually pretty close already. So let me, like, that's off, obviously. Okay, that's off, obviously, right? So you're trying to minimize the shifting of the image as it goes in and out of focus. Okay, and then intensity list focus. And I can move the beam up here. And then we could stigmate the probe image here if we want, but we're going to have to make our final tweak. So I activated the condenser stigmators here. We're going to have to make our final tweak looking at the actual STEM image itself, but we'll leave that right there. And done. And we'll activate the stigmators. We'll turn diffraction on. So now your camera length in LM-STEM is very high. Okay, your collection angles are very small. You actually cannot go lower than this as far as a camera length. So the the STEM image we're forming, this is very much a low angle annular dark field image. Okay, it's not a HADF image at all. We do have, of course, the option to center the direct spot in, or the direct disk inside like this, and we can go ahead and start the scan. Okay, so it looks like our intensity list is a little bit off. So we can again come back here to intensity list focus. Okay, and we see there's a little astigmatism. So now trying to look at the grains in the platinum will not work here because you don't have the resolving power for that. Okay, so activate condenser. And you're just trying to make your image as sharp as possible. You can see as I go through focus, I'm seeing the no stretching. This is very, very similar, about as similar as you would get to doing like stigmation on a SEM. That looks good. Okay, so there we go. Okay, so again, this is technically a LADIF image, not a HADF image. Your collection angle, yeah, this is probably fairly accurate. So very, very, small values here. And let me go ahead here and move this up to the middle. Okay, and let me take an image. Okay, so now obviously we can use LM-STEM to do, course navigation around the grid. That's what I'm actually going to show you here in a second. But you can also do LM-STEM intentionally if you are doing something like a differential phase contrast experiment where you're looking at magnetic domain structures because your objective lens is very weak. Now, there's actually also a way to drive this to 0, and it's easier than actually using the free lens control, so that's what I'm going to show you here in a second. Now, if I look here, so that's a 26.5. That's as close as it'll get as far as a similar field of view. So yes, so by doing using LM-STEM mode for a DPC experiment with magnetic domains, you're not going to be exposing the domains to a strong magnetic field. Now, even at this objective lens value, there's still not an insignificant field. So we actually can drive this all the way to 0 and remove the magnetic field completely. Okay. And so I'm going to show you how to do that. It's very easy. You don't actually need the free lens control for that. It can be done much more simply. You do have to enter LM-STEM mode from nanoprobe mode, though. You can't do that if you enter from microprobe, okay? Which will be more evident here in just a second. Okay, so now just to show you this, my acquisition. Okay, so you can see here, right, we can mag really far out here. We can actually see the grid posts there. And we can see, multiple lamellas on multiple posts, right? So this is a quick way to navigate around. I mean, you can see here my field of view is 358 micrometers, okay? So, I mean, obviously you can resolve those two posts with your unaided eye, right? So this is definitely an optical microscope kind of limit here, but you can see that we're definitely able to get deep into the nanoscale here as well. Okay, all right, so let's talk about how we can drive the objective lens to 0 for like a DPC experiment. Okay, so let's come back here to the STEM panel, and now we have to switch focus from intensity to intensity and objective. Okay, so now if I take my focus knob, I can drive my objective lens all the way to 0. Okay, see what's happening? I'm driving that all the way to 0. Okay, and then you can reset the defocus. And now at this point, you have to do your focusing with your intensity knob, okay? So we can see here, whoops, a little too coarse, my bad. Have to be kind of gingerly with this. Now I believe here, so let's actually take a look at this if we stop the scan here, because this should alter the alignment somewhat, at least here. So let's see here. And the pivot points aren't too bad. Okay, that's a little bit better. Okay. We need to expand the beam here. Oops, let's get that out of the way. Okay. And we'll check our rotation center again. Okay, so that's off, right? I mean, it makes sense because we changed the objective lens setting. So it makes perfect sense that that would now be off kilter. Okay, that looks good right there. All right. And so we can we can activate intensity list focus here. Oh, whoops, now the problem is this put the objective lens back here. Okay, so my bad. All right, so let's go done here. All right, so I have to fudge this back here. Yeah, I seem to remember this from previous when I did this. Okay, there we go. All right, so now let me make sure that this is still reasonable. Okay, so that got thrown off again. Okay, that looks good right there. All right, and now we can't use intensity list focus because otherwise it's going to put the objective back to its normal value. So we're going to just have to focus this manually with intensity. We'll push diffraction. Okay, we can center our direct disc. Okay, and there we go. So again, you have to be pretty gingerly here. Now it looks, I mean, the stigmation really looks pretty good here. Go ahead and tweak this anyway. So even with the objective completely off, this is still a decent looking picture here. again. So again, I don't think you're going to see a huge difference in terms of the resolution. But again, the advantage of this now is, again, that we have reduced the magnetic field in the pole piece gap substantially by doing this, right? So you can see, right, objective lens 0. Okay, that was 22. Okay, there we go. All right, so once this is done, I'm going to show you the nuance with nanoprobe. Okay, yeah, one other thing I need to do. So now what would be nice, right, if we wanted to, because we've got, some different layers and whatnot here. It'd be nice if we could do EDS mapping. Well, unfortunately, the system won't let us, okay? If we go to the EDX panel and then try to open the shutters, it gives us this error, okay? So whether you're an LM, TEM, or STEM, you cannot open the EDS shutters, okay? Unfortunately. So that's a safety mechanism, okay? So no mapping, unfortunately. That'd be kind of neat if we could do like micro scale mapping um, in here. But I mean, I guess you can at like the lower mags in like STEM microprobe mode, right? Okay, so that's the objective lens at like 4.5. That's with the objective lens basically. Okay, so actually one last thing I can do here. Okay, to make that a little bit more even. Excuse me while I grab a drink. So yeah, so again, if you wanted to do this, drive the objective to 0, you'd have to enter LM from nanoprobe, okay? You don't have that option if you enter from microprobe STEM. Okay, very good. Now one last thing to point out here. If we put this back to where is it here? Okay, if we put this back to intensity here. So actually now if I do that, okay, if I just switch it to intensity, so actually that keeps the objective where it was, okay? So I don't have to actually do anything with it, which is nice. Okay, so now it's important, again, in LM mode, when you're focusing, you only want to focus with intensity. You don't want to use objective, okay? The reason is because we did all the alignments relative to the condenser. So if we did use objective, okay, so watch what happens with the image here. Actually, sorry, let me first put it on intensity. Okay, so you can see as the image is going in and out of focus, I'm not seeing the image shifting, okay? this is what you want to see, okay, if everything's done properly. But now if I set this to objective, okay, see the image moves around quite a bit. Okay, so, and this is, not good, okay? Again, because we didn't align to the objective when we did this, okay? So, yeah, so again, now this is different, obviously, as I said, this is LM mode, not nanoprobe STEM mode, and not microprobe STEM mode, okay? So, yes, again, unfortunately, this will probably should be objective in nanoprobe STEM, and then when you enter into LM, you have to put this to intensity. Now, I believe if I wanted to put this back, if I push eccentric focus, yes, so that will put the objective lens back to where it was. Okay, I'm not going to go and realign everything. I'm just going to leave that alone. The one thing I did want to show, though, is, let me put this back to objective, because we're going to enter back into STEM mode. Oops. Okay, I'll be right out here. Center beam. All right, let me stop the scan. Okay, so now if we wanted to do microprobe mode, go to beam settings, free control, and change your mini condenser to microprobe. Now, technically speaking, if you're going into microprobe, I would put the monochromator focus at -40, okay? So let's go ahead and do that here, just for the sake of correctness, okay? And actually, well, I can align this a little bit better when we actually turn off the diffraction. But you can see here, now in the stem, there is no option to change this. It's stuck on intensity, okay? So if I turn off diffraction, take out the detectors, beam shift, okay, and now we can actually adjust the monochromator a little bit better here. Make sure that's properly centered. There we go. Okay, so now in microprobe, your optimal focus is different now. Okay, so we can see in the TEM image here, this isn't a ronchogram, this is actually the TEM image, so the image is over focused. So actually we want to go down here to get minimum. That's actually maybe a little bit, something about there, okay? So we're deviated a little bit from where we were, which is fine. And so, but basically from here, the LM, right, the LM alignment is no different than what I showed you previously. Again, the major change will be the current setting. So just really quickly here. Okay, we'll just leave that alone. I'm not going to align STEM microprobe here, explicitly here, just to. Okay, diffraction on. Okay, so you can see the improved resolution here that we weren't getting in in LM mode, okay? And we can actually resolve those platinum grains here, okay? So then again, right, enable LM is checked, and then this kicks in around, I think it's 3500X indicated, yes, and then you go into LM. Okay, so it remembers whatever the spot size was, it doesn't matter, this isn't separate for, say, LM from micro versus LM from nano probe. Okay, and just like before, you can use intensity list focus here. Get us in the ballpark. So you can, I don't know if you noticed this, the current's about twice what it was before, okay? Which is, again, not unexpected. Okay, we got a little astigmatism. We'll leave it right there, though. Pause, turn off diffraction, remove HADF. Okay, and actually, I suppose we can do the pivot points first here. This should still be looks okay. Looks okay. Spread the beam out here. Move this to the middle. Rotation center. All right, so that's off. Seems to be a lot of hysteresis with this when you switch between regular STEM and LM. All right, there's the list. We'll leave that alone, and we'll fine tune it from here. Okay, that looks reasonable. And there we go. All right. Okay, so now I've got my condenser stigmators active. And again, we have a little crescent here, or a little peak. This will work well for this. Looks good. Okay. Again, still not resolving the grains, just like we would expect. And that is the skinny on using LM-STEM. So again, some of the nuances there that I, again, missed in the previous two videos here. So again, I always try to get the most correct information I can. Okay, let me see, there's like a shift in the picture here. That happens with the dwell time. The dwell time is really short. As you increase it, the image will tend to shift a little. All right. So again, don't leave the system in LM mode. I mean, we were in microprobe mode before that. So what you want to do to make sure that it goes back to normal nanoprobe when you enter STEM mode, I'll show you what you can do here. Okay, let's move off the sample here. Okay. And okay, we can mag back up until we get to regular STEM. Okay, there it is. And then once you're in microprobe, just push probe here, and that will put it back to the right lens settings for for nanoprobe. Okay. Push eccentric focus. Now this is interesting. It's giving a really high value for the defocus. So why is it doing that? That's interesting. So this went back to objective, clearly. Yeah, these are the right lens settings here. So what's going on? Oh, I think what we need to do actually is, in that case, we have to reset the defocus here. Let's just take a look at the image of the probe here really quick to make sure. Yeah, our probe image looks good. So actually what we have to do here is reset this. Okay. Okay. So that's why that was doing that. So anyways, all right, I'm going to go ahead and get out of STEM mode here. All right, so that is the skinny on using LM-STEM. Sorry for doing the repeats here again. I want to give people the most accurate information. So, all right, take care, everybody. Happy Saturday.